All right, welcome everyone. My name is Jamie Lee. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, if you don't know who I am, my name is Jamie Lee. I am a leadership and negotiation coach. I'm based in New York City. And every Wednesday, I'm offering a webinar to provide support to as many people as possible during the crisis. And today I'm really thrilled to have a guest. I'm so thrilled to have my mentor, Victoria Pynchon. Victoria, would you like to say hello and introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I am, Jamie is my best student ever. And I am a negotiation consultant. I do teach. I'm a mediator, an arbitrator, and a lawyer, but I decided somewhere after 25 years of adversarial practice to learn how to resolve fights peacefully.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years, really, 10, 14 years. It's been good.
Yeah, and while I was preparing for this webinar, I was thinking about the last time I was working in a recession during the 2008-2009 recession. I was actually working as a hedge fund analyst. And in 2009, I found out I was making 50% of the going market range.
Oh my God.
Yeah, my base was $50,000 when I read in a report that the going market range is 100, and I felt devastated. I felt so bad, but I also lacked self-confidence, so I didn't do anything about it. But
yeah, it's particularly hard right now. I'm talking to probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 people a week just on free COVID consultation calls. And it's interesting. I mean, business is happening. The professions are happening. People are working from home. People are getting jobs, leaving current employers, negotiating compensation, getting raises, negotiating raises. So it's just a little sticky out there, a little jittery.
So I think it really depends on which industry you're in, right? If you work for a restaurant, like this is like you're furloughed, right? And
yeah,
really not going to be able to ask for your market value as a waiter. That's for sure.
right. Well, most of the people I've been talking to are essentially, they're administrative personnel, they're professionals. I haven't really been talking to rank and file people, the people who are supporting us all and keeping us in food and clothing and whatever else we need to have delivered to our door. So yeah. I have posted some resources for those people on the site and also on LinkedIn.
Yeah. And just to finish up my story.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So in 2009, I found out I was making like 50% of the going market range. And I was thinking about like how it felt so awful, like more than 10 years ago. But like looking back, this might sound a little Pollyannish, but looking back, it was also the best thing that ever happened to me. Because it was so painful that I found out I was making half of the going market range that I decided, oh my God, I really need to learn this. I really need to learn how to communicate. I really need to learn how to negotiate and advocate for myself. It was like all these things that my mom was telling me that I should be doing when I was growing up, but then I like rejected because I wanted to be the good girl, the light girl, and the quiet girl.
Good mom.
Yeah, she was my first negotiation trainer ever. And then it was you, right? And it's because I decided, oh my gosh, I really need to learn this. That's when I started actually studying, principles of interest-based negotiation, going to Toastmasters, becoming a speaker. And I have this vivid memory of 6 years ago. Like, you're one of these people that I've never met in life, but actually completely changed my life. Because 6 years ago, I got on the phone with you and Lisa Gates, and you told me that, as a negotiation trainer, you can make a living. As a coach, you can, as a woman, like there is a need for this in the marketplace. you can go out there and you can do trainings for organizations and make thousands of dollars. And I'm like, really? And I remember thinking, wow, is that really possible for me? And
Yeah.
then fast forward like a couple of years later, all of that became reality. And I think that's like really speaks to the power of mentorship, like having mentors who can tell you what is possible for you beyond your, scope of, what you think is possible for you. It's like, and then it becomes true, just because you put that idea in my head that it was possible.
So let me ask you this. What is, aside from being angry, what is it that enabled you to begin negotiating compensation for yourself?
Uh, what, say that again?
Like what skill or what realization or, what permitted you to begin negotiating on your own behalf? Because that's what's so hard for so many of us.
Yeah, and I think I totally lucked out because, not lucked out, I shouldn't say I lucked out. What really helped me was thinking that, wow, I need to walk the talk I give. Because I started like talking to women about negotiating, and then I realized it's like, it was so simple, but we made it really difficult in our own minds when we discredit and we discount ourselves. And so I was like telling everyone like, oh yeah, you just gotta ask. And then I'm like, I gotta be in integrity with what I'm telling other women. I have to be the example of what I'm selling, be the product of my product, in other words.
And so, and um, how did you find the best way of asking was? What techniques or what skills did you acquire that allowed you to ask in a way that
Yeah.
people were likely to respond favorably to you?
Okay. So this definitely took trial and error. And I read all of the articles that you wrote on the Muse and the Forbes, and you and Lisa Gates. I read all of them. And then what I did was, okay, I really got to just believe in the value that I'm bringing. And so this happened, what was it, 2014 or 2000? It was 2012. I was working as an operations manager for this little tech startup, and I was making $65,000 at the time. And I found out they were going to hire some, like a colleague who's going to be at my same level, and she was going to come in at 80,000. I'm like, okay, something just does not add up. So how do I correct this? And so I went and I read all of the articles that you wrote, and then I made a comprehensive list of all the ways I added value. Like I just made a list of everything that I did, and then I quantified everything. And I'm like, this is pretty solid. Like I run these reports, I run payroll, I do onboarding, I'm the liaison, I'm like processing, I made up a comprehensive list. And then I went to my CFO, who was my boss at the time, and I said, this is the value I'm bringing, and I want to, keep bringing more value. I'm invested in adding more value to the organization, and I would like to have my title and pay adjusted to be on par with the going market range.
Very good. And what happened?
And I also brought printouts of the research, like on salary.com, payscale.com, and they all said, operations directors make close to $100,000. So I'm like, well, that's what I want. And the subtext that didn't, subtext was, of course, I would like to be on par with the other person because I knew what they were going to be making. And so I think I asked for like 90, and we settled at 80.
Good.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah. So that was really fun.
So it wasn't scary after all.
It wasn't scary, because I knew that because like I had done the work, because I had done the preparation, and like, yeah, I thought about like the pushback, and like I was prepared.
You were
Yeah.
prepared, yeah.
Yeah.
Women sometimes ask me what they can do to be more confident, and
Mm-hmm.
I tell them they're not entitled to be confident unless they're prepared.
Mm. I tell women something slightly different. So
Oh,
that's probably something that some of the attendees are wondering. Like when people wait to be confident, they're kind of hoping that they'll feel comfortable,
yeah,
right? When you're prepared, like you think there's going to be a certain level of comfort. But I tell people don't wait for comfort.
right.
Yeah. Confidence is what you have as a result of having taken the action, but comfortable is never going to be the fuel that drives you to take action. It's going to be like allowing that discomfort and just courage, right? And courage is uncomfortable by definition. It's feeling the fear and taking the action anyways.
So what's the greatest difficulty you think people are having negotiating during the coronavirus pandemic?
Um, I think it's guilt.
Interesting. Say a little bit more about that.
I think it's we're just bombarded with the news, right? We're bombarded with like everyday people passing away and people getting laid off, um, and particularly women, like we have a tendency to feel guilty um, because we've been socialized to think that we need to take care of other people. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that, yeah, that was the answer that just came off the right top of my head. Like I think like feeling the guilt about like, oh, there's so many other people suffering out there, and maybe I don't really deserve to be asking for what I want at this time. Maybe I'm being selfish. Like that's my hunch.
Yeah, I think you're right. It is a time of shared sacrifice.
Hmm.
And I usually tell people to build that in to the conversation, particularly in the very first part of a negotiation session where you're building trust with
Mm-hmm.
your negotiation partner to do what interest-based negotiators do, which is to ask a lot of questions about the well-being of your negotiation partner
Mm-hmm.
and engage in active listening. I hear times are really rough. It's been hard for me too. Exhibit a little empathy. They
Mm-hmm.
might ask you what's been hard for you. And then you begin to build a relationship in which it's going to become much more comfortable to talk about compensation,
Mm-hmm.
uh, particularly if they tell you about a problem they're having and you think that you could take one of those skills that you listed on your spreadsheet in the Jamie needs a raise spreadsheet,
Mm.
um, and say, I think that my skill in X, Y, and Z is I would like to take those skills and apply them directly to the wound that the company is experiencing.
Yeah,
So,
that's really good.
well, and it allows us to, I mean, it's true that we're enculturated to be
Mm-hmm.
caring and helpful, but that's a good thing as long as we don't let ourselves be taken advantage of, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that most of us are concerned about other people and the well-being of the people who we work for. And, as long as we're able to kind of be knowledgeable and know that offering to be of assistance in a time like this is going to help us also be paid market value for the services we're providing and to be able to ask for it in a conversational way.
Yeah, yeah.
And
What
of
I
course,
love about
yeah, go
what I
ahead.
love about what you offered is first, like, it's okay to be human in these conversations, right? It's okay to
Imperative. Yeah,
say that again.
it's imperative.
Yeah, it's be human.
I think authenticity is one of the great skills of a great negotiator.
Yeah,
Is
absolutely.
the ability to be present to someone else's concerns. And once you know what their concerns are, what their needs, desires, fears, etc. are, then you can sell them what they already want.
Right, right. And I think how we can get over the guilt or the negative emotion that holds us back from really owning our value is while being human, also acknowledge that your self-value is not the same thing as your professional value. You know what I mean? Like the
Yes. I
work
mean,
that you do, the contribution.
yeah, okay. I get it. I might
Yeah.
be a flawed person, but I'm a great lawyer.
You might be a flawed person, but you might be a great lawyer.
Yeah. Actually, there are a lot of flawed people who are great lawyers. I'd be interested in knowing what some of the participants would like to have
Oh,
some
you're
insight.
breaking up.
What, am I breaking up? Oh no, you froze. Jamie.
Oh, you're frozen up.
I don't know what to do in that event.
You were saying?
Can you hear me? Can we turn off the video and just do it audio? Will that be less taxing on the Zoom app? Jamie? Oh no. I can see you. I can't hear you.
Okay, we're back.
Oh, great. So, okay, so I was saying I'd be interested in the people who are attending, what kind of difficulties they're experiencing right now. Looks like we have a couple of questions. I was recently laid off. I'd like to negotiate for a better severance. What advice can you offer? And then also, how do you negotiate a salary when first offered a job, especially now? Why don't I take the severance question since I've written on it?
Sure. I don't know why I don't see the questions.
It's in a little Q&A at the bottom of the screen next to
Yeah,
the forward and share screen. Well, I'll watch for them.
okay.
I'll watch for them. So
Thank
I'll take
you.
severance. The main purpose of the severance agreement is to protect your employer from a claim that you were wrongfully terminated. You don't have a lot of negotiating power when you're terminated. I would suggest, one, talking to the person who you have the best relationship with, who has some influence and might be able to exercise that influence on your behalf. Everybody on the call should have a sponsor, someone who has your interests at heart and is willing to use his or her political capital to forward those interests. And believe it or not, I know a lot of people who have to terminate employees, and they're very concerned that those employees land somewhere softly and are terminated in a way that's somewhat fair. But the hard fact is that you have something of genuine value to your employer, and that is you're giving up every right you could possibly have to someday bring suit against them. I don't think it's effective to threaten to bring suit, but it is effective to talk about the value to the company of your giving up all of these rights, because you genuinely are exchanging something of value. It looks like a form. It is a form. I would probably also, particularly at this time, trade power for sympathy, and to talk about how long you think it's going to take you to find a new job, how long you've been with the company, and then refer to objective metrics, which would include, people who have been in these kinds of positions for this many years generally get 3 months severance or 6 months severance. And I've done research on that just on Googling it so that you can get some kind of idea what the standard is, particularly if you look at blogs that are like human resource directors saying what they think and what they want to tell how other human resource directors negotiate severance agreements. Again, it's about getting into the mind of your negotiation partner so you'll know what their interests are and what their attitudes and preferences are, and that will allow you to use those facts to have a conversation in which you might well be able to get an extra month or two of severance. That's my general severance advice. So the other question, Jamie, is how do you negotiate a salary when first offered a job, especially now? You want to grab that one?
So if you're offered salary, I would, well, first of all, you want to understand like what is happening to this organization, right? So you want to ask them, okay, how is the COVID-19 impacting your business? Are there layoffs? Are there, you know, what is happening to the business? Are you adjusting projections, growth projections, revenue projections? So you have a understanding of how the business is impacted by COVID-19. And if you are in a business that's not really impacted by it, then I think then you have grounds to ask, okay, is this the best that you can offer?
I know you would have done the research on market value. And you would, I think, make the first proposal if you could, and if not, re-anchor or reset the bargaining range by saying something along the lines of, you know, I've benchmarked and done the research on what competitive compensation is in this position, in this geographic region. It hovers around X, and, you know, too many women do the research and they see the average and they ask for the average. And I always say,
ask for the high end.
Yeah, you're not average. You've never been average. You're not average. So ask for at 70% or ask for 80%, have the facts to back it up, and put that number out there. You don't even have to ask for it. You can just say it and then go silent and wait and see what their response is.
That's good. That's good.
You know, this is what I was anticipating being offered, because it's my understanding this is competitive compensation for this kind of position. And then shut up and let them struggle to figure out how to respond to that, rather than saying, would you consider that? I think it's implicit in what you're saying, and it moves you. Asking them whether they'd consider something moves you from, I think, a position of power to a position of being a petitioner. So yeah, that's what I do.
That's great. And I wouldn't worry if you are in an industry that is not directly impacted by COVID, and a lot of industries are not, right? So if you're not impacted, I don't think you would even have to worry about it being an issue. And always, as Victoria is highlighting, you just make it about the value that you're offering. About the potential that you offer, potential contributions, and the value of that to the prospective employer.
Right, and I think that also answers another question, which is, how do I ask for a salary adjustment right now? I think it's identical to asking for a salary when you join a company. I always try to use the term competitive compensation, because most organizations are prideful about being competitive with their peers. If they're not, they're going to have to explain to you why they're paying less than everybody else. So when talking about a salary adjustment, I'd also come armed with market data about, which is how Jamie got the raise that her first raise after she learned how to negotiate.
Yeah. And one more thing, this anonymous person asked, how does COVID make it different to ask for salary adjustment? Again, you want to be up to date on how your organization and industry is impacted by COVID. Because I've talked to clients who have been laid off, who have, seen promotion and raise timetable gets spread out, and I have clients, whose organization have decided to forego merit increases, right? So like every organization is doing something slightly different. So if your organization is laying people off and they're foregoing merit increases right now, and if you want to ask for a raise, then this may not be the best time to ask for a raise. This might be the best time to set the stage for a conversation later on. This might be the best time to be like, hey, this is the value I'm bringing. This is the impact of my contributions right now. And I totally understand this may not be the best time to do a salary adjustment. So when would be a good time? Could we revisit this conversation 6 months from now?
Right. And I would do, it's probably because I'm a lawyer. I would make it a little more assertive. I would say, let's circle back to this in mid-June, so that you're setting the agenda. You're not asking them whether they'll do it. You're saying, let's do it. Let's come back and have this discussion in mid-June. I think by then, both the contribution that I'm making during this difficult time and the company's ability to adjust from negative to competitive compensation will also be more clear. And I can't imagine someone saying, no, I'm not going to talk to you about it in June. I mean, they might say, well, let's try July, but keep it on the table. I've talked to a lot of people who were offered raises and promotions before COVID and now feel very uncomfortable even raising the issue. And my advice is don't let it slip off the table. Keep it active and give yourself a time when they're anticipating that you're going to come back and talk about it. Somebody also asked about location. How do you negotiate location? I do have thoughts on that. Do you, Jamie?
Yeah, my thoughts on it is I'm curious as to when Claire is bringing up the relocation issue, like when are you telling them that you're not interested? I think the timing could have an impact, because if they're bought in on you as the perfect candidate, the best candidate for this role, and you're both on the same page about that, then relocation becomes like a secondary issue. Right? So, so I want to say the first thing you want to do is make sure you are articulating and advocating for you being the best candidate for this job, regardless of where it is located. And when the hiring manager and you both are on the same page about that, then you can go into specifics about where are you working from.
Yeah, I would definitely leave location to the end. I had one client who was interviewing for a job that threatened to take her to Los Angeles. She lived in San Francisco. And she told me, I don't really have any intention of relocating. And I said, well, let's leave it to the end. It's just like a car salesman wants to keep you on the lot for a long time because the car salesman wants you to envision that car in your driveway, right? When you become invested in it. So let them become invested in you. And what happened in her case, the male partners, she's a lawyer, the male partners who were interviewing with her were pretty much outrageously flirting with her through all of these interviews. And they always fought over who was going to take her to the elevator. And so one of them took her to the elevator and said, I'll walk you to your car, went down the elevator with her and said, by the way, we're not going to make you move to Los Angeles. So, I'm not going to go into how you should respond to flirting. But But if you're capable of keeping the boundaries strong, use it to your advantage. It's used against you all the time. And it certainly worked to her advantage. She gave away a deal point without having to do so.
Okay, so I'm reading the next question. Somebody who works for a small business, about 400 employees. We've been dealing with a lot on the payroll front. We've had staffing reduction, pay cuts, and one of our locations has not been paid yet for the last pay cycle. This all being said, is this the right time for me to negotiate my base salary, or should I wait until the org has stabilized? I've been taking on more responsibilities over the course of this year, and my current base salary is lower than market rate. Okay, so
same response.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say? I mean, I would ask the questions again in a casual way. This isn't like one conversation; it's many conversations. So I would ask, you know, how is the company responding to new hires? Are we paying competitive rates to new hires?
Oh, wait. Victoria, this person is somebody who works for an organization and they are doing staff reductions and pay cuts. And there's a location that's not been paid yet for the pay cycle. And she wants to renegotiate her base salary or his, I don't know. I would, if I were you, I would wait. I would wait. I don't think this is the best time to renegotiate your base salary if, you know, the company is having trouble paying their people, their existing staff, and they're cutting.
I would still ask the questions. I would want to get a sense of what the temperature of the company is, what groups of people the company is letting go, whether or not you're in that group, whether or not they're, you know, what the company is thinking about for the future. I think these are questions that the company has to know its employees are concerned. And you can use that information down the line when you think it's a better time to negotiate, to actually put a number on the table and say, hey, I'm doing more and I'm being paid less than I would be otherwise. So yeah, it's a delicate.
Yeah, it is a very delicate one.
It's delicate, but use the time to find out what the company's plans are and whether or not, you know, you're so valuable in the position that you're in that the company would, you know, if you left, the company would probably have to pay somebody market. Maybe not. It's hard to know. I mean, both Jamie and I lived through this recession, and I was consulting with women at the time of the recession and at the time of the layoffs. And it was tough then too.
Yeah, and I would suggest, I do agree with Victoria's saying that this is not time to just sit on your hands. It's time to actually engage and get curious and collect information and data. And I think how you approach that conversation is going to be really critical. I mean, it always is critical, but how do you ask for that salary review or set the stage for salary review later on, right? Because if you want to make the case, I'm so underpaid right now, then they're going to be like, well, you know, there are people who don't have jobs right now, right? So I have another mentor who did renegotiate her salary after people got laid off, after like half the company got laid off, and she negotiated and she doubled her salary. So it is possible. And again, how you frame that conversation, instead of coming from, oh, I'm so underpaid, you want to build a case of strength for you, build a case of like, I'm bringing so much value to this organization. I'm so indispensable to this organization. You would be nuts to not pay me double and have me stay.
Yeah, and quantifying that if you can is great, even if it's a large general number. Like, are you part of a team that's driving revenue? What kind of revenue are you driving? Are you or your team driving every year? Are you part of a team that's cost saving? How much are you saving every year? Revenue drivers tend to make more than cost savers, but it all comes out in profit at the end. The woman who asked about location says, before I'm able to speak to the hiring manager, they want to know if I'm open to it. I would say, depending on, the interview and how good the offer is, and all my options are open. And, at the end of the day, you may find that this shift in working culture from the office to remote workers may become a part of the future. So I would leave relocation open. It's not a lie. It's like, hey, if you paid me $1 million a year, I'd relocate to Anchorage. So, and it turns out, oh, darn, you're not offering $1 million a year. That's not going to allow me to relocate. So that's what I would do. I would say that I was open. And then, Jamie, what resources do you use to help people figure out their market value? That's, I think, the last question. Oh, second to last.
Yeah, and there was one more, right, about this person who has annual review coming up on her anniversary. We'll get to that. Okay, so what resources do you use to figure out your market value? Google.com, payscale.com, salary.com. There's so many, payza.com. Victoria and I have a contact, what's her name? Jordan Sale. She has this great company called 81cents.com. And what they do is they actually ask real people working in your industry, and they get their real feedback on, hey, what do you think of this offer? They're offering 120 for, software engineer. Is it fair market value, do you think, or they should ask for more? So there's a ton of resources available. And I am still kind of old school in that I like to suggest that my clients talk to real people, like real human beings who work in your industry, or somebody who's just like a step or two above you or ahead of you. Like Victoria was for me, like when she told me 6 years ago that I could make a living as a negotiation coach, like that completely changed the game for me, right? And so definitely do your online research, but also talk to people you look up to, people who are just a step or two ahead of you, or people who've worked in your company and have left, or get their feedback. And also talk to men, because men tend to have, slightly different
salaries.
Yeah.
If you go to PayScale, I don't know if they still do it, but they used to break it down by gender, and the men always report making more money than the women do. So, yeah, I mean, it's also good to know from women above you whether or not they feel like they're not being paid as well as their male counterparts, and, form a working bond with those people. Learn why it is, or why they think it is, and what they're doing about it, and whether or not they have any advice for you. People senior love to advise people junior.
Yep.
And people senior probably give too much unsolicited advice, but we are really happy to give advice that's solicited. Our children don't do it enough. So what happens when they directly ask you, are you willing to relocate? I'd say depends on the circumstances. Let's talk. I am open.
Yeah.
It's going to depend on, how much you want me and how much I want you. And so let's talk about that. I can't say at this time that I absolutely would do so. And if you lose the interview opportunity because of that, it was probably not worth having.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the $1 million the questions. Like, hey, if you offered me $1 million, I would move. Yeah. But you don't have to say that. Right? That's just what you think to yourself. You're like, sure, if you offer me $1 million, yeah, I might move.
Yeah.
I'm open to it. It's a possibility. Okay, so we have another question. My company performs annual reviews on the anniversary of your start date. I was prepared to ask for a significant raise on my next annual review, which is coming up at the end of May. But with current circumstances, finances may be strained. You don't know that. Finances may be strained. So I would I would not make the assumption that finances are strained unless you know for sure that the company is cutting their projections, they're losing their funding, they're laying people off. If they're not, don't assume that. I mean, companies have, cash, and they have resources to funding. Interest rate is at 0 right now, right? And gas is like negative. I mean, there are resources available. Money is flowing in this economy. People are buying things. People are selling things. USPS is busier than ever. I spoke with somebody who works for USPS, and he said it's like Christmas time right now because so many people are buying things. Money is going around the world. So let's not make the assumption that finances is strained. Maybe, he said, right? So do I ask for a raise or do I not? It depends. And again, we want to reiterate, whether you do ask for a raise this time or not, it's always a good idea to start setting the stage, start articulating your value, start finding out like what do decision makers most care about? How can I, deliver that value in space right now so that by the time you do have that conversation, ask for a raise, you have so much data to show that you are so valuable. It would be nuts not to pay you more to keep you.
You could also open with a concession. So here's one of those power principles, the power of reciprocity.
Mm-hmm.
If you invite someone to a 5-course meal at a fancy French restaurant, your friend is not going to reciprocate by taking you to McDonald's. And if they don't have the same resources you do, they might cook you a 5-course meal or find some way to reciprocate in a way that is proportional to the favor that you did. So you could say, listen, I know things are tough right now and that, annual review is coming up with the raise. And I just want you to know that I understand that the company's probably not, or you should know actually, whether or not the company's in a position right now to do so. And then again, say, so listen, let's kick it to July or August. And you've done that person a favor now. They haven't had to come to you. It's meaningful that you're doing the thing that Jamie says people are feeling guilty about, but I think that is, a common value that we have of shared sacrifice during times of crisis. And you've shown yourself to be a person willing to sacrifice for the company. And you're not sacrificing very much by saying, let's do it 2 months from now, but do it by offering it. That's a good strategy.
So are you saying suggest a timeline?
Yeah, I'm just saying timeline on all of this. I mean, I would continue to be hopeful about the economy. We're in for some rough times. Yeah, it's playing out in the culture now, how nervous and frightened and confused people are. And so I think being a person of hope and gratitude and can-doism, shared sacrifice without devaluing yourself, having those important conversations about how's business is a great question to learn. Things are tough all over. How are we doing? Find that out so that, as Jamie said, you don't have to make an assumption about it. And that information is going to be crucial to you 3 or 4 months down the line. So yeah, it's time to be a great leader, a great highly engaged employee who the HR people define as someone who not only goes out of their way to do things outside their job descriptions, but encourages other people to do so as well. And there are not very many people who are highly engaged, but if you're one who's identified as highly engaged, you're going to be in line for promotion and raises more than the disengaged or only so-so engaged employees.
Yeah, I want to just highlight, this is the best time to work on your mindset, because your mindset will dictate how you respond to the times, how you show up when everyone else is freaking out. Because perspective is choice, and how you choose to see your current set of circumstances will dictate how you feel. Like feeling guilty is a choice, feeling doubt is a choice. Yeah, and if you can choose to see this as just an opportunity for you to show up as a leader, as Victoria was saying, I think that'll go a really long way for you. And also, what I want to say, I forgot what I was going to say. It'll come back to me.
We have more questions. One is, do you see 3% as the standard cost of living across the board? It certainly was. It's not enough to keep up with the market. It hasn't been enough to keep up with the market, but we're in a wait and see. And somebody else said that they work for a company, the CEO said salary increases are suspended, but we're still promoting people. Should I be promoted? Absolutely, yes. Be promoted. Say you understand about the salary increase, ask to circle back at a specific time so that you've already prepared the ground and you don't have to ask this question again, what's the right time, and you can, and if things have gone from bad to worse, by mid-June, you can come and you can be even more ingratiating by saying, I know things are even worse today, so let's talk in October. I remain confident that what we're doing to get through this crisis is going to take us back to a place where we were before it. So be a cheerleader for the company. They need you. The people at the top are everyone is, nobody is unworried. There's no one worried.
That's the thing I was going to say. Yeah, everyone's worried. When everyone's worried, the person who is calm, poised, collected will naturally stand out as a leader.
Yep.
Yeah.
And people will do things for you, which is, these are principles that are in place all the time. It's just that they're more important now. But this is how, you know, and trust me, when I say these things, I say these things from having made a lot of mistakes in the course of my career in terms of, you know, showing up, making sure I'm not a person complaining about how ridiculous HR is, how much I don't like somebody who's superior to me. I was.
So the things not to say in a negotiation.
I was a cranky employee in my early years, and eventually, fortunately, a mentor told me to stop it and join the baseball team. And I didn't join the baseball team, but I did begin to get to know the people who I viscerally didn't like. And the next year at my annual review, my mentor said, I don't know what you did this year because you didn't join the baseball team, but your reviews have changed radically. Now everybody likes you. So
that's one thing that you wrote about in the article, in the Forbes article, how, being likable is bankable right now.
Yeah, it's always bankable.
Yeah, and I want to add, like, for me, when I think I have to be likable, it's easy for me to burn myself out trying to please everyone else. And that's not what we're suggesting.
That's what we keep boundaries.
Yes, keep boundaries, be really disciplined about the boundaries that you set, but also make sure you like yourself first before you try to be liked by other people.
Yeah, we have on my former business partner, Lisa Gates, has a document on our resources page that are the 7 ways to say no. And it's a great document. It was great for me. I love that she did it. So, I can't right now. My favorite is, I think John would be a really great person to do that, and he needs the training. I'm happy to oversee it, right? You don't ever say no.
My favorite is thank you and no.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have stronger boundaries than I do, Jamie.
Okay, somebody asked, when asking for a later review, what should be said via email versus in person? I would say what you would say is what goes in the email. I try to keep my emails really short and to the point, and I try to say what I would say in person in my emails, so there's not a lot of confusion. But when asking for a later review, here's a dead simple script. First, I would lay the groundwork by articulating your value. Say, I'm really proud of the work that I've done. Here's how I have added value. Here's how it has impacted the thing that you most care about, whether that's cost or revenue or some other KPI. And I'm committed to growing in this role. And that is why I would like to have a conversation with you 3 months from now, 6 months from now, to review our compensation, because I want to grow both in my scope of responsibilities and in my compensation. How would that work for you? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Or just let my reviews coming up. I know that things are tough right now. Let's circle back mid-June, beginning of August. Just, just keep it on the table and put it on your calendar.
There you go. You have two different scripts. I think either one is more straightforward, but there you go. You have some options there. Okay. Somebody asked, what is the best way to deal with temperamental leadership?
Oh.
What are your thoughts on that, Victoria?
Well, I was a temperamental leader. I was raised as a lawyer by Wolverines. So I had the culture changed with Gen X. So how to deal with a temperamental leader? I'm thinking about my experience. My experience was, one, avoid them and try and lateral yourself to somebody who is going to be more helpful to your career. If you can't avoid them, there is some flattery and ingratiation that goes a long way. I had a client recently whose boss was more than temperamental, he was abusive. And my advice to her was, you need to tell him that you will continue this conversation when he's not yelling at you, that you can't think clearly and you can't have a rational conversation when he's yelling. And she was having trouble doing that. Made me feel bad. It made me worry for her, because you've got to be able to tell people who are bullying you that you're not the person to bully. And my experience, and believe me, there are a lot of bullies in law firms. My experience is those bullies will move on to someone who's easier to bully. I don't think you have to put up with it. There's always go to HR, but remember that HR is not working for you. And HR is probably also being bullied by the bully who's bullying you. So I think that you really need to, know where your boundary is, state your boundary clearly, not, not be insulting, but also say, this is not a good way for me to work. And so let's have this conversation when you're not quite so angry. And then maybe you can talk about why it is that this has caused so much anger in you.
This is great. I love all of it. And I want to offer a different perspective. Okay.
Yeah.
The perspective I want to offer, I think all of the strategies and the solutions Victoria offered is great. And I also want to get curious about what makes you think that leadership is temperamental. Like we think there is temperamental leadership and it's just a fact, but the same guy or the woman that you think is temperamental, other people might think, oh yeah, that person, they're just like cool as a cucumber, right? So temperamental is an opinion. It's a thought that you have about this particular leadership. And just notice how when you think they're temperamental, like it makes you feel a certain way and it makes you want to react a certain way. And maybe you feel temperamental yourself when you think about them being temperamental, right? So this is the kind of work that I help my clients do, is like separate like what is neutrally factual, provable, and then how does our brain want to react to it? How does it just like kind of by default thinking making you feel like, oh, I'm a victim of the situation, or they, took credit for my work, or they never respect me. Like these are all the thoughts that come up very easily to us. But then when we think that, we just feel terrible and also resentful. And we feel resentful, we don't have access to our full power to negotiate and really say what we want to say in a grounded, calm, confident way. So separate the thoughts from the facts, right? And then after you've separated the thoughts from the fact, and then you can decide how you want to think about this leadership. And then you decide, do I want to avoid them? Do I still just want to keep my boundaries and avoid them? Or do I want to use like the strategic appeasement approach, where like Victoria talked about ingratiation, right? Trading sympathy for power, or sometimes you just have to put up with people, right? Even if they're really difficult, you develop the capacity to deal with them. You develop the emotional capacity to not get disappointed, not get defeated, not give in when those people are saying the things and doing the things that you feel is either temperamental or difficult. So just a slightly different perspective. I wanted to offer that, but I think the strategies are ultimately like, when you have a clean mindset about it, then you can implement those action strategies and have a different result.
Yeah. Right. All right. So, is there another question?
Oh, this person followed up with, if they are a bully, how can you tell if it is them or if it is you triggering it? It is definitely not you triggering it. It is always them. If they're yelling, I'm going to tell you, it's not you triggering their yelling. It's what they think, their thoughts, their opinions, their perspective that's causing them to feel a certain emotion, maybe anger or whatever, that causes them to yell. It's never you. So,
yeah, well, this person says the temperamental leader yells, and my advice would be the same. I would say, I'm happy to talk to you when you're not yelling at me. I don't do my best work under those circumstances. So let's set a time when we can have this conversation without yelling. And, eventually, I have left law firms where I was working with people who could not be controlled, and they would not stop. And in fact, they affected the entire firm. So the partners yelled at the associates yelled at the clerical workers yelled at the people in the mailroom. So you can also be in a culture in which intemperance is permitted. And I just have to leave. I work for money, not for emotional abuse.
okay, so Anonymous asks, is it possible to do damage control if you have expressed any misgivings about a supervisor, especially if you want promotion and raise? Good question. Getting very specific here. I think it depends.
Yeah, I think it's always possible to do damage control. And the way you do damage control is to form a better relationship with that person.
Yeah.
And that that requires usually things like asking about their well-being, being concerned about their kids, learning what they're interested in. There's a difference between being what we used to call an ass kisser and someone who is authentically and genuinely interested in other people, even if even though those people appear to be incompetent or emotionally triggering or something else. There's usually somebody operating under there who can be reached with the simplest of strategies, which is, how are things? How are the kids? How,
Yeah.
how was the profitability last year? Is there anything I can do to help?
Right.
People make assumptions about other people all the time. We do it because we need to shortcut in order to live in a society with so many people in it. And if you finally conclude that you're working for a narcissistic sociopath, get out. Get out. Maybe not at this time. It just means you need, the support of your friends. You need probably exercise, a hot bath, whatever makes you, whatever, self-care, right? Jamie's going to be better at that than I am.
So,
what kind of self-care do you recommend, Jamie?
self-care, I recommend mindfulness. I recommend breathing. There's a lot of anxiety. I do deep breathing every day at night before I go to bed to calm my nervous system. I do journaling, yoga, and I get coached a lot.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Good. All great suggestions. Don't read the news before you go to sleep.
Yeah. I try to read the news very, very little. Well, okay, so I think we have answered all the questions.
The last question is, does carbon catch up to them eventually? And I'd say, wait for November of 2020.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, I think this was a lot of fun for me, Victoria. I feel like it was so fun having you and answering these questions. I hope people had fun and also gained value, some actionable insights. And where can people go to learn more about you?
Well, they can go to shenegotiates.com to learn about me. As soon as COVID hit, I added 15-minute free COVID question consulting. I also cut I had a $100 hour. I cut it in half because I knew people were suffering. And then I also continued to work at my regular rates. But for people who have the kinds of questions that were raised today, I think either what's become the $50 hour or the free 15-minute consultation is a good place to start getting your feet on the ground.
Okay, and if you want to have a consultation with me, I offer a free hour consultation. I'll help you if you struggle, especially with self-confidence. That's my specialty. Come to jamieleecoach.com/apply. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you,
Hang in
Victoria.
there. Thank you, Jamie. That was fun.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Bye.